Hello from the 1011 Now streaming studio. I'm Danielle Shenk. Joining us now is our overnight producer, Ryan Swanigan, who also doubles as a high school volleyball commentator for Lincoln Prep Sports and NOS Sports out of Omaha. We decided to give you a little bit of break from the election stuff to break down this year's NSAA State Volleyball Championship brackets as the tournament starts on Wednesday at Pinnacle Bank Arena. So Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me. This is one of the greatest times of the year in terms of fall sports. I know everybody loves high school football at Memorial Stadium, but volleyball precedes that. Of course, state softball has been over for almost a month now, but going to be some very exciting matches as the week progresses, and getting a preview of who could be taking home the state championship titles in all the respective classes on Saturday at the Devaney Center.
All righty. Well, let's just dive right into it here with a preview of Class A. We'll bring up our bracket here, showing things off here. So we have number 1 versus number 8. That's Papio South taking on Lincoln North Star. Number 4 versus 5, which is Lincoln Southwest taking on Millard West. 2 versus 7, that's West Side versus Grand Island, and 3 versus 6, so that's Fremont and Elkhorn South. What are your thoughts on who we have in Class A, Ryan?
Yeah, well, a lot of interesting matchups right out of the gate. Obviously, you've got Papio South, the number 1 seed, and they are looking to go unopposed this year for another Class A title for themselves. Lincoln North Star making the state tournament for the first time since 2014. The Gators have worked very hard to get to that spot. Had to go through Grand Island to get it. Islanders also make the tournament too as the lone wild card for Class A. But Lincoln North Star would love to be able to pull off what would be another astonishing upset, kind of do what Papillion La Vista did to Papio South last year in that rivalry meeting at state. Monarchs won it. Eventually ended up in the state championship, so Lincoln North Star looking for that. Of course, on the flip side of that, Lincoln Southwest, your 2023 Class A state champions, they swept their way to the title. Millard West opposing them. Millard West is back in the state tournament. They weren't able to make it last year. They made it the year before. That's going to be a really interesting match too. Lincoln Southwest, Millard West. Those two teams are very, not just in record, but almost identically even when it comes to a plethora of statistical categories. So Wildcats, Silverhawks should be fun. West Side, Grand Island, that's a tough one for the Islanders to try and overcome. West Side is a very, very good volleyball team. And so those two teams will definitely be battling once again. That's actually a rematch of the opener from last year too, that West Side won. And then Fremont Elkhorn South. This is a very interesting match. Elkhorn South back at state for the first time in a little bit. Fremont, after having a bit of a challenging season last year, but you could see there was development there. They have exploded in how successful they are in 2024. They're led by Maddie Dalton, top 5 attacker in the state. The Tigers against the Storm is going to probably be the most interesting match of that opening round. In terms of who I see winning it, I think it's probably going to be Papio South. They are just so well-rounded. They are very difficult to beat. Their defense is so stout. They just don't make a lot of mistakes. They get after you. They make you have to make moves in order to be able to defeat them. And again, only 5 losses on the season. West Side being one of them. I think West Side is probably going to be their opponent in the title game. But Papio South is 3-1 against West Side this season, 9-3 in sets. They've just been Papio South, very difficult to beat. So I think the Titans are probably going to end up winning it this year. I could be wrong. We'll see what happens, but that's just what I think in terms of who's winning Class A this fall.
Right. And so I guess tell us a little bit more about West Side, why you think that, they're the number 2 going to explode out of this little section.
Yeah. Warriors, again, they've been a very interesting team. I think they're a little bit better than a 29-8 record. They've also played a couple of out-of-state opponents as well, not any like midfield or lower caliber. Like these are some very, very quality opponents that West Side has faced. They played also in the Nike Invite. That's in Phoenix, Arizona. Scott Catholic was a part of that as well. And again, I think just with Westside and seeing them a couple of different times myself, they are just able to hold up defensively, but they are very difficult to stop up front at the net too. When they get a chance to swing hard, swing away, just going straight down to the 45-degree angle, they get right after it. So I think Westside will have a little bit of a challenge. You have to stop Tia Trout, another who I think she's also in the top 5 too in terms of attackers in the state. So they got to stop her, and then right after that, if Fremont beats Elkhorn South, guess what? Now you have to stop Maddie Dalton. Yeah, and that won't be an easy task. So, but Westside just has so much success up front at the net, along with their defense. So I think Westside is going to make it through to the title game, but the question is, can they overcome a 3-9 record in sets against Papio South? Because that's what they're up against right now. If they do make it to the Class A title game.
Yeah, and I mean they're on that lower part of the bracket, so they do have that little path there. But I mean, we could soon have Papio South and Lincoln Southwest, who won it in 2023. Yeah, showing them here a little bit. What has kind of changed for them being the 4 seed after winning it last year?
So obviously, you're the defending state champs. You have a target on your back. You're back in the state tournament, but you're not a higher up in terms, they're the 4 seed right now. They are a very good volleyball team still. Jessica Kirkendall has worked very hard to get that team to where it is today and to get them prepared for that state tournament. They had so many seniors last year that they lost. It was practically, a lower end Division I AA, volleyball team right there. Kind of like Scott Catholic. Scott Catholic is practically playing college volleyball caliber volleyball out there. So Lincoln Southwest this year, not at that level, but that doesn't mean at all that this team is still not capable of getting the job done against Millard West and playing against Papio South. Those two teams played each other. I think in the championship match of the LPS Classic, Papio South swept, but Lincoln Southwest put up a fight. And so they know what they have to do in order to be able to repeat. It's going to be quite the hill to climb, but it is definitely very possible. Yeah. Got to start with Millard West, though. And Millard West, they did not like not being at state last year. And you can definitely tell that this team rallied in the offseason, came together, and they have been focused. They've been so focused to get back to state and to win and to move on and see if they can take home a title. So Millard West, Lincoln Southwest, that's also going to be a fun match.
Yeah, and all of these teams have had a little experience with losing. They've got more than a couple of losses in that column. Yeah. So, I mean, nice for them to have that before they get to the state tournament, to know what it's like to lose and to have the grit to fight through this and make it here for Class A.
It's kind of an example of, teams eating each other a little bit, kind of like the SEC, in football, where you've got all these great football teams and they have to play each other, and that's going to give you a loss. That's going to give you a loss. Same thing here. You've got so many talented and great Class A volleyball teams. Millard North is one where I think they're a little bit better than their record under first-year head coach Lindsey Grant. She came from Bennington, led the Badgers back-to-back years to state before she took the Millard North job. She is responsible for a lot of losses for a lot of these teams who are in state right now, because that Millard North team also just came together. They fought. They believed in what they could do, and even when they lost, they rallied, they turned right around, got the job done in the next match. So another fun team that isn't in state, Millard North, because Millard West knocked them out. That went 5 sets. Yeah, I think that's pretty telling right there. Yeah, for Millard West and for Millard North, how great both of those teams are. So going to be a fun Class A tournament.
Yeah. Alrighty, so let's move on to Class B. This one might be a little easier to preview and predict here. What are your thoughts as we have, let's see, I'll scroll on the bracket here so you can get a better look with us.
Fun Class B bracket, I'll say that.
Yes, number 1 Norris taking on number 8 Lincoln Pius. Number 4, Elkhorn North taking on number 5, York. Number 2, Scott Catholic, as we've been talking about already, taking on number 7, Gretna. Number 3, Waverly taking on number 6, Bennington. So thoughts here with Scott Catholic being in the, winning the last 9, but being in the last 10 championships.
Yeah.
I mean, golly.
Yeah, they're going for title number 10. There's no doubt about it. That 30-9 record is kind of a little bit skewed because they played in a lot of tournaments across the country. And even some regular season matches too. They've played out of state as well. So Renee Saunders, Hall of Fame caliber coach, especially, after you win 9 in a row.
Yeah.
There's no denying it. So on the flip side of that, I say this is a little easier to predict. And again, this is not a knock on Ginny Greggert and Elkhorn North. This is not a knock on Terry New Year and Waverly, on Sammy Hansen and Bennington, Wendy Loberg and Gretna. I've seen a lot of Gretna in the last week for Now Sports, and they have just been so fun to cover. And not a knock on York and Pius X either, but Norris and Scott want to practically fight each other. Not literally, but they want to meet each other at the Devaney Center.
Yeah.
And both sides want to start just taking swings up at the net.
Kind of one of those scenarios where it's like if they played 10 games, Norris would win 5, Scott would win 5. It's kind of something like that, or
this
maybe
season potentially yes. I told Christina Bosiger, the head coach of Norris, why don't we just go ahead and have a best 2 of 3 in terms of days for the Class B state tournament? Like a best 3 of 5 match happens on the first day. Then the next day, another best 3 of 5. And if a third day is needed, we play it there. Because I feel like that's just the type of volleyball that we're going to see from Scott and Norris. These two teams have just been dancing around each other since they played each other, interestingly enough, in an exhibition match to start the season. So you've got all those Hall of Fame jamborees that take place before the regular season begins. Well, Scott, Lincoln Southwest, and Norris all met in a triangular down at Norris, and that was split between Scott and Norris. Who knew that the Titans would be going on for the whole season to have their best record in school history, as far as I've been able to find. I went through all the records through state regular season best as I could, and what I have found is this is the best record that Norris volleyball has ever put up in school history, and it shows. This team is flawless. I still am trying to find where the mistake lies with Norris volleyball. 35-1, the one loss to the 1 seed Papio South Titans in Class A, and that wasn't even a sweep by Papio South. That was you were with me for that. Yeah. We saw how great of a match that was between the Titans and the Titans.
I remember oh no, the Titans from this.
Exactly.
School.
I had to specify who was who there. Meanwhile, Scott Catholic, again, they've only dropped 1 set to Nebraska teams all season. In the Nebraska teams that they have played, and that was to Papio South in the Bellevue West Invite. But Scott Catholic won that 2-1. So that's why I say, again, Norris and Scott, they are so focused on meeting one another in the Class B state championship again. After last year, after Scott just demolished Norris, it was not close. Norris just nobody really knows what happened. It was just Scott just took off.
Got swept in that title match. Yeah. So I know they're looking for blood now. But they can't. Sometimes you get a little too focused on the road ahead when you still got to take on a Lincoln Pius.
That
Norris
Pius team is way better than their record, and Pius was put into a very difficult schedule this season. Because, the abrupt change out of the Heartland Athletic Conference down to Class B, new athletic director, just the list goes on and on and on, what Pius had to overcome, and yet they got the Seward Blue Jays in the district final. Seward was looking to make it 3 years in a row at state. Heartbreaker at home when Pius rolls in there, but Pius, I looked at some of the teams that Pius beat. One of them was Omaha West Side. That was a 3-1 victory here in Lincoln for the Bolts. they've taken sets from other teams as well. They've played Scott. Scott swept them, but Scott has swept everybody but Papio South. So Pius is really looking at hoping that Norris will overlook them, because if that happens, Pius will be right there ready to take him down, and that would be tough to swallow for Norris for that match. And if Elkhorn North beats York, I'm sure Elkhorn North would love to have an opportunity to get to the state title game again, to try and avenge what they couldn't finish in 2022 when that match went 5 against Scott. They were a set away from ending the run, and the Skyhawks, as they do best, they dug deep, they held on, they got the job done for, at that time, what was their 8th in a row. So, and I haven't even gotten to Waverly Bennington. Like, that's going to be a fun match too. We can talk about Scott Gretna as well. The Skyhawks, these two teams faced each other in a sub-district final just last week.
Yeah.
And Scott swept them. But Gretna, after beating Gretna East twice in less than a week, to advance to a sub-district final and then to go to state, Gretna they are more than ready. They are so ready for Scott Catholic the second time around. Wendy Loberg, a phenomenal head coach. She is going to have that team ready to go against the Skyhawks. The winner of that gets either Sammy Hansen and the Bennington Badgers, also Hayden Liebsack as well, a phenomenal volleyball player, probably not talked about enough in Class B. The Badgers face Waverly. Terry New Year has this Waverly team going to state for, I believe, the 7th year in a row now. And Waverly would like to have another shot at Scott, because the last, I think, 2 or 3 years in a row, Waverly has been bounced out of the state tournament by Scott, whether it's in a semifinal or it's in the opening round. It's just, it's always Scott for Waverly for the last couple of years. So Waverly Bennington going to be fun. Those two teams met in the regular season. It went 5. It was incredible. So I'm not going to be surprised if it goes 5 again between Waverly and Bennington. And like I said, Scott Gretna, that should be fun as well. But ultimately, in the end, I think it's going to be Norris Scott.
Yeah.
And
good matches, but you'd be surprised if it's not Norris and Scott.
Exactly. Yeah. And as to who wins that, I don't really know. Scott has a bit of a challenge in serving the volleyball, and like I said about Norris, I don't know what their weakness is. I really don't. There were no weaknesses shown realistically in that match against Papio South in the regular season. It was just two good volleyball teams going at it. And I think that will be the same scenario with Norris and Scott if those two teams meet in the Class B final.
All righty, well, we'll move on to C1 here, the most difficult class in the state, arguably. So we'll kind of take a look at the bracket here. Scrolling down a little. Possibly. There we go. All right, we have number 1 Minden taking on number 8 Gothenburg, number 4 Kearney Catholic taking on number 5 Battle Creek, number 2 Pierce taking on number 7 Milford, and number 3 Scotus taking on number 6 Wahoo. Thoughts on that, Ryan? Yeah, so everybody knows that the target is on the Minden Whippets. I don't think there's any question about that. They even said that. Julie Ratka, the head coach, said at the beginning of the season, we know the target is on us. Now that we show that we can battle through, as she said, and I say all the time, a very, very difficult Class C1 schedule, especially when you get to the state tournament. And it's pretty funny that the road for Minden to repeat as C1 state champs starts with Gothenburg, because that's what happened in the semifinal last year, where Minden, I think that or the quarterfinal. I can't remember off the top of my head, and I don't have that pulled up here. But it was Minden and Gothenburg. Minden had to get by them. And somehow, some way, miraculously, Minden did just that. And then who they have to beat in order to win a title? Kearney Catholic at the Devaney Center. And Kearney Catholic is on the bottom side of that top portion of the bracket, taking on Battle Creek. I don't know what Battle Creek will do in their
quest to try and take down the Stars, who are just a phenomenal volleyball team yet again this season. But they're going to have to figure it out because Kearney Catholic is licking their chops. They would absolutely love to have revenge served, if you will, to the Minden Whippets in a semifinal to then propel them back to state and to take on who I think you and I called Malcolm Pierce last year, that 5-setter to start the state tournament in C1. And you said it afterwards, that Pierce team was young. They're going to have a lot of players back in 2024. And they have put up a phenomenal 27-5 record. They are so good, and they are very well deserving of that number 2 seed. Milford is going to have their hands full in that match. There's no question about it. And then beneath that, you've got Scotus Central Catholic and Wahoo. I have no idea who's winning that match, in all honesty. Both teams are so good and so sound. Wahoo, I don't think they liked the results of last season. And so they have taken what they learned from last year, put it into this season. The work shows in what they have done to get to this point. And see, they're a 6 seed. And I think they could be higher than that. But again, that's just a testament to how challenging it is for Class C1. You've got, again, kind of like SEC football. You've got all these great volleyball teams, but somebody's got to lose.
Yeah.
And so we end up with these 8 for the state tournament. And I really think it's going to be Minden, Kearney Catholic, and then Pierce taking on whoever wants to win Scotus and Wahoo. Like, those two teams certainly could go 5 in that opening match. That's Wednesday, too. I forgot that was Wednesday, so I'm going to have a front row seat in between my Class B calls and my Class A calls. I'm going to be watching Class C1 and just being so entertained by that, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I think Minden probably is going to be the one to win it, but it's not a guarantee. Nothing is a guarantee in C1 because it's just so challenging. And again, the Whippets know that. They have had such a difficult season in 2024, and yet look at them, 34-1. And the next closest team to them after that is the Pierce Blue Jays at 27-5 as the 2.
Yeah.
It's just how Class C1 volleyball goes.
Yeah, I mean, Minden won it last year, but they won it in 5.
So it was no breeze. Yeah.
So
they had to play 5, in fact, in the semifinal too. From what I remember, I should probably pull that up here, but it was not an easy road for them at all, and they knew that. Yeah, Grand Island Central Catholic. That was surprisingly a sweep for the Whippets right there. But then you get Gothenburg, and that goes 5. It's like, oh my gosh. And then Kearney Catholic, that goes 5. So you got back-to-back 5-setters, back-to-back days to win a title.
Yeah.
I mean, they know what it takes to win it. And they certainly, I think they can based on last year and what they have done this season. But they know the road is not easy.
Yeah, I mean,
starting with Gothenburg, ironically.
Yeah, I mean, Gothenburg did win in 22, so a tough challenge from a number 8 seed.
Absolutely, and you knew like I said too, cannot rule out Kearney Catholic.
They made
it cannot rule them out at all. They want a title. They're watching. Again, last year it was just this cycle of, Gothenburg loses to Minden. But Minden lost to Kearney Catholic, but Kearney Catholic lost to Gothenburg. It's like this weird triangle that just produces all these thrilling matches and everything. So, C1, most difficult class. EMC, the most difficult conference, but the most difficult class is C1.
Yes. Now, next up is C2. This one also may be pretty easy to determine as we have a look at the bracket here. We'll have to move things up a little bit so everyone viewing this can also see who we're going to be talking about. Number 1, Lincoln Lutheran taking on number 8, Hastings St. Cecilia. Number 4, Norfolk Catholic taking on number 5, UTAN. Number 2, Oakland Craig taking on number 7, Johnson Brock. Number 3, Thayer Central taking on number 6, Freeman. So Lincoln Lutheran, Are they going to take home their 4th title in a row?
Yeah, I think yes, but the road is not going to be easy. It starts with Hastings St. Cecilia. They also, interestingly enough, we were talking earlier about Class A, how there's 2 top 5 attackers in the Class A state tournament field. Hastings St. Cecilia has Peyton Sullivan, top 5 attacker, or top 10 attacker in the state. She's a top 5 server in the state. Just a fantastic volleyball player, Peyton Sullivan. She's got some good help around her as well. So Lincoln Lutheran is, I'm going to be surprised if there's somebody going up on a solo block on Sullivan for Hastings St. Cecilia. There probably should be a double block there every single time on Sullivan. She is just that lethal. But I think Lincoln Lutheran has the ability. They've got Carrie Leinbach. They've got a Husker commit right there. And it's just trying to get a ball down on Carrie Leinbach is trying to get a ball down on Lainey Choboy or Olivia Malk or Lexi Rodriguez. You know, that's how good Carrie Leinbach is. There's a reason why she's going to Nebraska, and that's it. So, challenging match for Lincoln Lutheran to start right there out of the gate.
Yeah, and now I think they won in 2023 against Clarkson Lee and in 2022 against Archbishop Bergen.
Yep.
But in 2021, it was Oakland Craig.
Yeah.
So it's been a hot minute since Oakland Craig's been in the championship match. But hey,
and they're
they're here this year.
Yeah, they're a very good 2 seed, and they've been in state for, gosh, I don't even know how many years in a row. They just keep on showing up, whether it's C1 or C2 in the last couple of years. Oakland Craig is not somebody you snooze on at all. They work hard. They battle it out. They try to get the job done as best as they can, and they do at the end of the day. Yeah, this is going to be the 4th year in a row that Oakland Craig is in the state tournament. C2 all 3 years. And prior to that, they hadn't been in it since 1992. And now they've rattled off 4 years in a row. They're doing things right up there. And so Oakland Craig against Johnson Brock. Johnson Brock's going to have their hands full. There's no question about it. The 4-5 and 3-6, no idea. No idea. Because Norfolk Catholic, that is kind of the surprise team this year to make it to state. They are very good. On the flip side, so is UTAN. They are very good. They were at state last year as well, and I remember watching them against Elmwood Murdoch, a very, very, very fun and good Elmwood Murdoch team from last year, too, that made it against Lincoln Lutheran in the semifinal, losing 3-1. But UTAN, they weren't swept either. UTAN put up a fight against Elmwood Murdoch, and I think that went 5. Can't remember off the top of my head, but Norfolk Catholic UTAN this year, flip a coin, because those 2 teams are so even. Forget the record. Forget the fact that Catholic is 28-4, UTAN's 28-1. They're both such stout teams, and whoever wins, I can tell you this, whoever wins, if Lincoln Lutheran gets past Hastings St. Cecilia, whoever wins Norfolk Catholic UTAN, that's going to be a big challenge for Lincoln Lutheran, because, again, you've got 2 teams that are probably maybe a little should be higher up in terms of seeding. Nothing against Oakland Craig at all.
Yeah.
But good luck to Lincoln Lutheran in the semifinal if they make it past Hastings St. Cecilia, because that, I would not be surprised if that goes 5.
Yeah, and I know it comes down to this point system that you see next to their record, but C2 has quite a few teams that aren't so adept to losing as much. Lincoln Lutheran only has 3 losses. Norfolk Catholic only 4. Oakland Craig has 5.
Thayer Central with 2.
Yeah. And Freeman with 4. So, and I guess not to leave out UTAN, 28-1. So
yeah, the best one right there in terms of records. But Thayer Central Freeman, by the way, same thing like Norfolk Catholic UTAN. I have absolutely no idea who is going to take that one home. It's truly just a toss-up. Freeman is good. Thayer Central is very good. And they are very excited to be, I know this, they are very excited to be that 3 seed. So Freeman's going to have their hands full, but so is Thayer Central. So we'll see who ends up winning that one. Whoever does, probably going to be Oakland Craig over Johnson Brock, very likely. And we'll see whoever Thayer Central or Freeman wins that one. Oakland Craig against either Central or Freeman. Oh, that's going to be good too. Semifinal could be really, really fun.
Yeah.
At PBA on Friday.
I was going to say, we always like to maybe see some of those lower seeds make their way towards the championship, especially in, I know that we've already passed this, but in Class B, knocking off a Scott Catholic who's been there 10 times. Like
everybody wants a piece of Scott Catholic. Everybody does.
Up, but
first up is Gretna.
Yeah. So we'll move on to Class D, D1 and D2. Never easy to predict.
Oh, yeah. And this is where it gets a little foggy for me, too, because I don't
And this
really...
is where I can put in...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'm
exactly.
from Class D land, so
yeah.
I know a few of these teams will scroll it down here.
Yeah.
Class D1, we have number 1 Southwest taking on number 8 Diller Odell, number 4 Cambridge against number 5 EMF, that's Exeter Milligan Friend, number 2 BDS Bruning Davenport Shickley against number 7 Howells Dodge, number 3 Superior against number 6 Cedar Catholic.
It can get crazy down here, I will say that. Like, records mean almost nothing when it comes to D1 and D2. I mean, look at this. You've got Southwest 33-0 on the season. Oof. They've been rolling this season, and there's really nobody even close to them. Obviously, BDS is the 2. That's the next the closest team to Southwest. But you've got a separation of 1.5 points. Like, that's kind of it looks a little bit like Class B, in all honesty, how Norris was just like, who's going to get close to the Titans in terms of the wild card points? Same thing in D1. Who's going to get close to Southwest in D1 there? Diller Odell, I'm sure, is going to have their hands full, but they're also licking their chops. They see that 33-0 record.
Yeah.
Oh, they want to give Southwest that first loss of the season. As the 8 seed, too,
and I mean, that's almost your championship match right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, wow, I'm an 8 seed. I make it to the state tournament, and then to knock off the number 1. I mean,
an undefeated number 1.
Yeah, and you're like, wow. I mean, obviously, winning actual hardware, it will be great. But I mean, just I think maybe a little bit of a different feel of if they would successfully pull that off.
The task of trying to overcome that. Yeah.
And when it comes to these Class D's schools, as having been from High Plains, like, we know that the districts can get really wonky when it comes to having subs and then district finals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Superior Cedar Catholic, by the way, very, very deceiving match. I'm going to tell you that right now. Cedar Catholic, you would think a team with a 14-18 record, that's sub 500 record, would be the 8th seed. But they're not, because they've had some challenges this season in terms of who they have played on matches. That's why their wild card point number is just a little bit higher than Diller Odell. You see that number there, 42.4667 for Diller Odell, excuse me. And then Cedar Catholic with 42.75. That means that Cedar Catholic has been taking on some higher quality opponents, and they've been challenged, and they've gotten some pretty big wins in those challenging matches that they've had. So that is probably the right place. Obviously, you base it off of the wild card points. If you were to take that out, that's probably the right spot for Cedar Catholic, even though they've got that 14-18 record. If I'm Superior, I'm doing everything I possibly can to forget that record and stay very focused and sharp on what we need to do as a team, because Cedar Catholic is going in there ready to fight.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
And I mean, Class D can be quite the toss-up. I mean, Howells Dodge, they were in the 2021 championship. Cedar Catholic was in the 22 championship. But I mean, last year it was Sumner, Eddyville, Miller, and Amherst. Neither of them made it this year.
Yeah.
Hardington, Cedar Catholic in 22 versus Norfolk Catholic.
Constant rotation almost for D1 and D2. Yeah. And that also leads to thrilling matches as well. That's the other flip side for D1 and D2. You could probably have at least on one hand how many five setters
Yeah.
could be taking place in D1 and D2 in the opening round of state. That's not semifinals. That's not the championship. That is the opening round. And I know a lot of, newspaper folks and broadcasters are like, oh, man, now we're here longer and longer. I'm like in the minority of like, give me the 5-set thrillers. I want to see this because it's so exciting. It's so thrilling. Everything is on the line. And then you go 5 and now it's like, oh my gosh, now it's really on the line because it's do or die every single time in set 5. At state, it's amplified. So it's always really fun. Always really fun with the D1 and D2 matches.
Yeah, and we'll take a look here at the D2 matches as we continue in this class. We have number 1, Layton, undefeated, taking on number 8, Meridian. Number 4, Central Valley, taking on number 5, Amherst. Number 2, Overton against number 7, Wynot. Number 3, Shelton versus number 6, Stewart. So there's the Amherst that I was looking for in D1. Sometimes.
Or it changes too.
Yeah.
This
switches
offseason
back and forth
with
depending on enrollment, things like that.
Oh yeah, and I think the NSAA too also made a couple of adjustments as well to where some classes could move up without having to opt up for where they play in terms of D1, Class B, C1, etc. But yeah, again, not familiar with D2, but I can tell you that it really doesn't matter because everything is out the window when you get into the state tournament for 8 different schools in D2. I guarantee you Meridian is looking just exactly like Diller Odell licking their chops at Southwest. Meridian is doing the same thing with Layton. Undefeated Layton team. Meridian making it in as the 8. Had to win your district final in order to get there. They're ready to hand Layton their first loss of the season right in the state tournament. Like it would just be phenomenal for them to do that. Amherst, I'm sure, they want to get back to the title. Forget the fact that it's D2. They are ready to go, and they have Central Valley to start. I know that team will be ready as well. Everybody's going to be ready. So Amherst, though, I think, as you mentioned, is being in last year's D1, now down in D2. Experience is experience when it comes to the state tournament. If you've got it, it certainly helps. Yeah.
And just thinking about my experience from when I was in high school that many years ago, to add a little insight to this is High Plains was in the same conference as EMF. It was only Exeter Milligan at the time, BDS, and Meridian. And so we knew these schools, and they were good when I was in high school, and they're still good now, a decade later, pretty much. So nice to see them still in it. But we've heard of Howells Dodge. Their boys sports, I think, were good when I was in high school. But now, they've been making a name for themselves in the volleyball world.
Yeah.
As well, and Amherst, Overton as well. So
I love that Wynot is in there too for D2 because I always love the saying, and I hope Wynot says this as well. Why not?
Yeah.
As a 7, I think I said that last year. They're taking on Overton, the 2, Shelton and Stewart as well beneath there. There's an interesting match too with 2 teams there, 29-3. I would not be surprised if that one goes 5. Again, I don't know too much about the D2 schools, but I can tell you, like, you've got 2 29-3 schools down in D2. You could be possibly spelling out a 5-set thriller right there.
Yeah.
So.
And Overton, no stranger to the championship. Won in 23, lost in 22, but they've been in it a couple of times.
An experience too, long-term experience. Or I should say long-term success always translates to experience regardless of what it looks like. You've been there, and you've been there consistently over the last few years. It goes a long way. It helps out, and I'm sure they would love to win another title, Overton.
Yeah. Overall, is there any class or matchup that you're most excited about or most excited about to call?
Gosh,
I know that's a tough question.
Yeah, I guess I won't like go semifinals or championship because that starts predicting and whatnot. I'm gonna have primarily Class A and B, and then I'll have Lincoln Lutheran on Thursday against Hastings St. Cecilia. Oh, gosh. In terms of watching, I think Minden and Gothenburg, certainly. I know the Swedes are so thrilled to have Minden again. But in terms of what I'm going to call, honestly, I think it might be the one that you're going to be joining me for, which is Waverly Bennington on late Wednesday morning, because I called that regular season match at Waverly, was not expecting a 5-setter, and not many people were.
Yeah.
And that's what we got. And Bennington almost won it.
And when was this?
This was October 10th.
So
right
somewhat
before,
recently.
Yeah, right before the Eastern Midlands Conference Volleyball Tournament at Norris. So it was like a perfect setup for both teams. Like, all right, we've got EMC tournament this Saturday. Here we go with a match against one another, and it went 5, and I couldn't believe that it went 5. It was thrilling and fun to say the least, and I know Waverly is wanting to get back to the semifinal, because if they do, they get Scott Catholic.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, Bennington has been red hot in the month of October, like scalding hot. Record doesn't show that, but this team has so much grit and so much fight. They just are, they just forget everything.
Yeah.
Bennington is going to play Bennington-style volleyball. They're going to hunker down. They're going to keep the ball off the floor as best as they possibly can. And any chance that you can get Hayden Liebsack or Keaton Liebsack set up to swing hard, left pin, right pin, primarily the left pin for Hayden Liebsack, get out of the way, because it's probably the equivalent of, I don't know, like a Merritt Beeson, Becca Alec, Andy Jackson. Like, Hayden Liebsack is just...
I mean, if the girls are listening to this, I mean, tell us later of how it feels to be compared to some of the Husker greats.
No,
right now.
Seriously. And again, like there's only, maybe I can count on one hand the serve style that I have seen from Hayden Liebsack. And it is just, you've got this toss, ball spinning around in the air. It's something that you only really see at the college level and even at the professional level. Hannah Moody, who you know, of course, very well, has called so many matches with me, and she says all the time that it's just kind of a dying style, if you will, of a serve.
Jump serves, yeah.
But there is still some players who do that, and to see it done at the high school level and done well is very rare. Hayden Liebsack is one of those players who does that, and Waverly is going to have to be prepared for it. They've seen it before. They had a little bit of a tough time at one point in that match in October dealing with that style of serve from Hayden Liebsack, and it just gives so many opponents a challenging time. There's a reason why Hayden Liebsack is tied with Gross Catholic's Mariah Dutcher as the top server in the state in terms of aces. And Hayden Liebsack is going to have a chance to overcome that and be the number one server in terms of aces at state when they play Waverly on Wednesday morning. So Waverly Bennington, you got the Lonstein sisters, you got the Liebsack sisters. Yeah. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really, really fun.
Man, we could talk volleyball all day.
We could. We certainly could.
Riffing off questions, things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's NSAA Championship volleyball in the volleyball state. So, Ryan, for those who want to listen to the action this week, where can they do that?
Yeah. So, we're going to have the schedule posted on Tuesday on both Lincoln Prep Sports and on NOS Sports as to who's calling what, where you can listen. LincolnPrepSportsNow.com will also be having a couple of different matches airing on Twitter or X as well. On NOS Sports, it'll be constantly on nosports.mixlr.com. So we'll have that there. We'll also be streaming live on the Facebook and Twitter pages as well. And yeah, it's going to be pretty busy stuff, busy times for me at state, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's just so much fun being at Pinnacle Bank Arena at the Devaney Center for these matches. Just a lot of fun stuff. So, yeah.
Great stuff, Ryan. Well, thanks for being part of the 2024 State Volleyball Preview.
Thank you.
And as a reminder, we will also have complete coverage from our 10-11 sports team from both Pinnacle Bank Arena and the Devaney Center on Saturday and throughout the week. So be sure to stay tuned to 10-11 for all the highlights and reaction, both on air, online, and on our social media pages. From our newsroom to wherever you are, see you on the next stream.
10-11 News is everywhere. Download our smart TV apps and follow us on social media at 10-11 News.